happened to you, right? I was blind, but now I see. And so it is merely, it's a testimonial. It's telling others of what God has done in your life. Okay? And so that's important for Orthodox Christians. Because I think as Orthodox Christians, we shy away from testimonials. Do you know why? Because we really don't have them. And we often think that testimonials are things that other people do, other denominations. But we are the church that has experience, we can experience Christ in the liturgy. We can experience Christ through the sacrament. So my question to you today is, do you have a testimony of what God has done in your life? What has God done in your life? That if someone came up to you and said, hey, what's God done in your life? You can tell them. How has God impacted your life? How has God moved in your life? And then you're not going to sit there and try to figure it out, try to figure out an answer, but you'll give the answer, you'll give your testimony. God will work inside many of you here today. Through sickness, through illness, through relationships, through trials and tribulations, to give you a testimonial. And you're going to use that testimonial to be an evangelist for Jesus Christ. Father Gheevarghese John, that's his house name that starts with a V. His official name is Father Gheevarghese John. And he's from India. He has a ministry called Sugata Ministries. It's a ministry that is based in India. Now, his style of preaching is testimonial. It's not confrontational. It's not intellectual. It's testimonial. He tells you his experiences, how he was ordained the day after his mother died, and his mother's casket was right there outside the altar. And so that brings people to his message. It gives them an understanding of how Christ can bring you out of situations, trials, and tribulations. So he has a testimonial style of evangelism. And this is probably something that God is working inside of you. And I wanted to show you a clip of one of his sermons. Here's a segment on Shalom TV. So this is one of the segments.
വിശുദ്ധ യോഹന്നാന്റെ സുവിശേഷം 15-ാം അധ്യായത്തിന്റെ 2-ാമത്തെ വാക്യം നമുക്ക് ധ്യാനിക്കാം. യോഹന്നാൻ 15:2. എന്നിൽ കായ്ക്കാത്ത കൊമ്പ് ഒക്കെയും അവൻ നീക്കിക്കളയുന്നു, കായ്ക്കുന്നത് ഒക്കെയും അധികം ഫലം കായ്ക്കേണ്ടതിന് ചെത്തി വെടിപ്പാക്കപ്പെടുന്നു. കേരളത്തിന്റെ ഒരു കാർഷിക പശ്ചാത്തലത്തിൽ നിന്നുകൊണ്ട് ചിന്തിക്കുമ്പോഴും, അത് മാത്രമല്ല കൃഷിയുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട ഏതൊരു തലത്തിൽ നിന്നുകൊണ്ട് ചിന്തിക്കുമ്പോഴും, ചെത്തി വെടിപ്പാക്കുന്ന ഒരനുഭവത്തെ കുറിച്ച് ആ ചെത്തലിലൂടെ
I just wanted you to get a taste of what he does. He's a very good preacher. He's brought a lot of people closer to Christ through his Sugata ministries. Not only that, a lot of people have been healed. A lot of people have been healed. And it's a true healing from God in the true faith. And so, what's your testimonial, friends? What has Jesus done for you that you can tell people about? Not going to a conference or not going to a retreat, but what has God done for you that you can tell other people with boldness and just tell them what God has done in your life to change you. And so that's the testimonial type. The next is interpersonal. We talked about Matthew. Well, in our own church, Evangelism tries to do a lot of that interpersonal relationship type of evangelism. The counseling program, which I know is in the Southwest Diocese, and I know that we are trying to start something in the Northeast Diocese. And so that type of evangelism is something that we are used to, that we have that. But do you feel comfortable developing relationships with people to bring them closer to Christ? Do you have the ability to counsel and talk to people when they are facing trials and tribulations? Do you find yourself in that position sometimes? Just think about it, right? You don't have to be an evangelist by standing in front of the crowd. You can be an evangelist by having a relationship with someone and talking to them and bringing them closer to Christ through your relationship. Relationships are very, very, very important. You can be a destructive influence, or you can be a positive influence on someone else. God has called all of you, and I think many of us can do this. Do you agree with me that you can do this type of evangelism? That you can develop relationship with your friends And you can bring them closer to Christ through the things that they are going through. You can witness what God has done for you and what God can do for someone else through the relationships that you develop. Okay, so this is an interpersonal, right? Interpersonal. It's personal. It's between you and someone else. I find myself doing that type of evangelism a lot because I'm a priest. Okay? And so people come up to me and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Okay, well, let's see what are you going through? Okay, let's see what the Bible says. Okay, let's see what you can do to stop right now. Let's see what you can do to overcome this. So that's an interpersonal type of evangelism. Okay? Go to the next one. So for the last two, testimonial and interpersonal, if you think any of that applies to you, go check it out. Okay? If it doesn't apply, don't check it out. If none of these apply, then don't worry about it either. You'll discover that when you're growing in Christ. The more you come to love Jesus Christ, the more you discover what He wants to do in your life. Okay, the next one is invitation. It's invitation. And we talked about the Samaritan woman, and we're not going to go through that again. But invitational is bringing people to the church, inviting them. Hey, there's a prayer meeting. Hey, there's a Bible study. To invite them. You know, I have my own Bible studies in Philadelphia and around that area. And one of the things that I stress with the people in my ministry team, Way of the Cross Ministries, is that we should invite people to come. Be warm. Be welcoming. Be compassionate. Be a church that is open to every single person. You know, so often what I see in the church is this ego that we are the Orthodox Church. We are this great community that has everything together. But if you really look inside ourselves, we have a lot of issues. We have a lot of problems. And our church should be a hospital that invites the spiritually sick, the spiritually downtrodden, the people who are having spiritual problems. And so it should be a church that invites everybody. It should be a church that invites, and it's a place of healing. The church is a hospital, a place of healing. So that type of evangelism is something that our church has to do. You know, do you invite others to experience the rich Orthodox liturgical tradition of our church? Do you invite people to experience what you've experienced? You tell them about the icons. It's nice to meet them. Right? You tell them about the liturgy. That's nice, right? You tell them about the incense. Tell them about what you experience at church, all the good things that you experience at church. And that's an invitation. And I know that we have practical issues. Look, our church is very Malayali, and if you invite someone that is not Malayali, it's very hard to incorporate that person, even if that person wants to become an Orthodox Christian. Nevertheless, this is the goal, right? This is the dream of our church. That one day our church will open its doors and become the church of evangelism. It'll open its doors to white, black, everyone. And say, hey, this is your church. And finally we can become that real and true American church, that Orthodox church that invites everyone and welcomes everyone. And so, if your style is invitational, that's something that you have to discover. Go to that part, and if there's anything that applies to you, you can check that off right now. And the next one is service. So the next one is service. And I think this is something that everyone does. Tomorrow we're going to have the presentation of Evangelism submissions. And this is the way you can be an evangelist. How many of you have gone on Evangelism submissions trips? Raise your hand. Okay. Everyone, keep your hands up. Okay. All of you were evangelists. Right? So, keep your hands up. You can be an evangelist by serving. You can be an evangelist by serving. Mother Teresa, we've heard her name over and over and over again in this conference. She wasn't confrontational. She wasn't intellectual. And I don't know if she had a testimonial style of evangelism. But she had the evangelism of service? Do you want to serve others and share in their suffering? If you're willing to do that, if you have a heart for other people, if you have a compassionate heart, a heart to serve others, then you have that style of evangelism. I always say that, my style is confrontational, and I always wondered what type of evangelism my wife would do. I thought she never had any type of evangelistic style. But when people come over our house, she's very warm, welcoming, she's very hospitable. She has the gift of hospitality. And that is a style of evangelism, a style of service. And so many of you have been part of soup kitchens and service projects that your Evangelism has done in your area. That's a type of evangelism. Okay? And what you have to do is do more. Maybe go into the inner city. And I'll give you some of the recommendations that I have for the church in the later segment. So if you want to serve others and share in their suffering, you have a heart for the poor and the suffering, you have a compassionate heart, maybe this is your style of evangelism. If it is, I want you to check that off. Okay? So go ahead. Do that right now if that applies to you. If it doesn't apply to you, then don't check it off. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch gears, different than what I did in my last segment, although this is the exact same presentation. I want us to share. Okay? I want us to share. Before we can go into the recommendations, if we have time, we can do that. Okay? So I'm going to open it up if you're willing to share. How many of you have a lot of things checked off on the intellectual part? Oh, sorry, the confrontational. Raise your hand if you think you're confrontational. If your style is confrontational. Just raise your hand. Don't be scared. If you're confrontational, you should be scared. Okay, just raise your hand. Okay. Why do you think Josh used this confrontational? Yeah. Why do you think it was confrontational? Good. Okay, excellent. How about you?
I just really disagree with agree with this song. I really don't like being out of the bush to the point.
Good. Okay, very good. Good.
Some theologies that I've ran into, I just really don't agree with, and I have been confrontational with them.
Okay, that's not bad. You should be confrontational at certain points. If someone comes and says Jesus is not God, for me, it's time for confrontation. So it depends. Maybe Phil Chimachin will step back and say, "Well, why do you think that?" He'll debate. We'll have that intellectual type of evangelism. Okay, good. The next one is intellectual. Raise your hand if you put down intellectual. If you think if you have a style that is intellectual. Raise your hand. You don't have to be scared. All right, why do you think it's intellectual? Why do you think you have an intellectual style of evangelism?
Well, I just like learning about the church a lot, and then I like figuring out I'll tell the other kids you know why we do this? Because of this. I'll be like telling kids all about the church.
You like to engage in the conversation and intellectual.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Maybe that's something that you can go and do. Research. A couple of the books that I have, What's So Great About Christianity, Dinesh D'Souza, Reverend Zacharias. These are great authors. So maybe I'll give you bibliography. Go ahead.
I like to bring up facts that really make people think and consider why they're doing certain things or what they should start doing. And then I like to argue the big edges.
Good. Very good. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Testimonial. Raise your hand if you have testimonial. If you have a testimonial style of evangelism. Raise your hand. Okay. Very good. You go ahead first. Come on.
I feel like the events that happened in my life can happen by peers, and like a couple of my friends we like